Good morning, everyone. The Mackinac Bridge Authority will now be called to order. Today's date is July 1st, 2022. And if we could start with roll call of the members, Kim, I'd greatly appreciate it.
All right, Chairman Gleason,
Here.
Vice Chair Trahey,
Present.
Director Ajaba, Member Cheeseman,
Here.
Member Kinley,
Here.
Member Steidel,
Here.
and Member Milliken.
Here.
Council Gleason. Treasurer Eubanks is not here.
Thank you very much. Before we move on, there was one item that I want to add to the agenda, and then there's a couple of deletions because of the way the timing is worked out. So under the deletions, it would be number 2. There won't be a need for election of officers. And number 15, outside of Amy's report for the finance, there won't be any committee assignments. So with that being said, I'd like to add under number 1, after we approve the agenda, that there's going to be some discussion about working with the new members that will be appointed to the Mackinac Bridge Authority, just to get them a little bit up to speed as soon as possible. So with that being said, if there's no further discussion, a motion would be in order to approve the agenda as presented.
I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and duly supported that the agenda be approved as presented. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, Kim, do you want to take off with the new member introduction, or the, I guess it should say the training discussion about?
Training.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't have new members to introduce this morning, but I wanted to speak a little bit about a new training idea that the director asked me to look into for new members. And so I'm working with Karen Goins, who is a consultant trainer that works with MDOT, and she's really good at this kind of thing, and she's helping put together a brief training for new members. And so it'll cover, Robert's rules and things like that. So you'll see something like that coming down in the future.
Thank you very much. We greatly appreciate it. And thank you, Director, for bringing it to our attention. Thank you. If, before we move on, is there anyone from the public wishing to discuss any matters with the Mackinac Bridge Authority? Anyone from the public? Steve, any input? No guidance? It's great to see you. Thank you. If not, we have minutes of the previous meeting, the Finance Committee meeting on March 10th, the official meeting on March 11th, a special meeting on May 20th, and a special closed session meeting on May 2nd as well. A motion would be in order to approve.
I will make the motion to approve those minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
It's been a motion's been made and duly supported to accept the minutes as presented. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. And we have the pleasure of having Sergeant Ryan Werner with us today. He's next up. Good morning, Sergeant. And thank you for all the good work you do in protecting the bridge and your fellow officers. We greatly appreciate it.
Morning. Thank you for having me today. I'm just going to touch on some of our year-to-date in brief. Typically, I have a slide that we'd present with traffic, stop data, and different collection of information from our activity. We're working on a new system right now, and we're trying to work out a few of the bugs. So some of the information that we've had in years past, I wasn't able to tabulate. So I was going to discuss some of the high key points. First off, I want to just thank the Bridge Authority for all the efforts and work they do with us. Most of the activity we have with our size and weight enforcement is in a tribute to the MBA with their weighing motions and the facilities they have. In whole, the weight enforcement in this last year, we have actually seen a decrease in the amount of violations from prior years. This is good in a way because it's taken away from infrastructure damage that can be occurring, as well as other aspects to size and weight and equipment malfunctions that can take place. One of the main things that I've noticed this last year is the work with the Bridge Authority. We've been able to outreach and find carriers that have been trying to slip under the radar to avoid our enforcement, as well as try to deter from going around the way and motions at the bridge. Through our work with the Mackinac Bridge Authority, we've identified at least 2 carriers this year. We've outreached to them and made sure that they become compliant with making sure they're going over the way and motions and they're staying underneath the legal gross. One area of concern that we've addressed for the last few years, and we still aren't seeing much of a decline, is the passing of commercial motor vehicles on the Mackinac Bridge. Through looking into this and trying to figure out the root cause of everything, I've determined it's mostly occurring with interstate carriers, meaning they're not local carriers that typically frequent the Mackinac Bridge. The signage on the bridge is very well posted and in numerous occasions has been presented in court hearings, and our prosecutors have used that to conclude that drivers are responsible when we do cite them for that. Other than that, I don't really have too much more to add. I just want to thank everybody for all the work they've done and work with us at the bridge, and the communication and teamwork that we have with the Bridge Authority has been very strong, and I look forward to continuing my work with everyone. Have a question.
One question, Sergeant. Is a carrier an individual or a company?
It may be both. So a driver can be an owner-operator, or he can be operating the authority of a higher company or the carrier. So depending on what setup they have, it could be either or. Typically, we see I would give them a ratio of maybe 50-50 of owner-operator to just a driver for a company.
Any other questions for the board? Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Session now to discuss the security measures for the bridge. And the way we're going to handle this is that once the motion's been made, supported, we officially enter into the closed session. The authority members will go upstairs, and everybody else will stay seated here. We'll be quick and be right back. So, with that being said, it's appropriate right now to have the motion made.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board meet in closed session under Section 8, subsection H of the Open Meetings Act to consider information about the security of the Mackinac Bridge, which is exempted from disclosure by Section 13, subsection 1, subsection Y of the Freedom of Information Act.
A motion has been made and duly supported that we enter into a closed session for the purpose of discussing these security measures on the Mackinac Bridge. Being no discussion on this motion, Kim, would you be kind enough to call the roll, please?
All right, Chairman Gleason,
Yes.
Vice Chair Trahey,
Yes.
Director Ajaba, Member Cheeseman,
Yes.
Member Kinley,
Yes.
Member Steidel,
Yes.
Member Milliken.
Yes.
And let the record reflect it's 9:09. So we'll go upstairs, we'll go into our closed session, and we'll be back here shortly. Thank you. Well, I want to thank everybody for your patience. Right now, we'll have a motion would be in order to re-enter the public portion of the Mackinac Bridge Authority.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion to enter back into open public session.
I second the motion.
A motion's been made and duly supported to re-enter into the public portion of the meeting. The time is 9:56. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And once again, thank you for your patience. We'll now hear from one of our bridge engineers, Cole. Will give you an update on the maintenance projects. Good morning, Cole.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairman. So I'm going to talk about our maintenance and specifically what kind of maintenance we've been able to accomplish so far this season. So if you remember in the March 2022 board meeting, I highlighted a project that we had ongoing that was a detail that we are fixing at the towers, specifically at our transition span, which, just as a quick reminder, is a short span that's actually in between our main suspended span and our backstay spans. And basically this transition span, it helps accommodate the movement that happens at the towers. These are, very large spans, so they have to accommodate a lot of movement. And we are having an issue because in order to help that movement, we had installed these link bolt assemblies that helped push and pull that transition span. And where those link bolt assemblies were located, we were finding various degrees of cracking. So we started a project last fall where we were repairing and reinforcing different locations we had identified where the cracking was most severe. So at the time of the March board meeting, we had completed about half of those repairs, and now this spring we were able to complete the rest of those. So these pictures on the left here was while the project was ongoing. So these are beams that we basically put in as secondary supports to help support those beams that were experiencing the cracking. So rather than going in and taking those out, which would have been difficult, we just supported and helped take some of that load off of those beams. And those are all complete now. And so far, I was actually under there on Tuesday. No link bolts were broken, and everything seemed to be working well. So that was good. And these are now painted green and blend in with the rest of the bridge. Some other maintenance we've done every spring. We clean the bridge. Over the winter, we place sand on the bridge rather than salt, but that sand gets on the structure. So it's the first thing we do at the beginning of every maintenance season is the guys go in and clean down the bridge, get that sand off. So that's actually a picture of them cleaning in the top right there. Another item we've been doing is grading replacements, which I've highlighted before. We're constantly replacing our grading panels. And this was a neat picture that was actually given to me by one of our painters, Rich Hillock. And it just goes to show how much work goes into those panels. So before they get put in, the painters actually get recruited to help clean and cut those panels in order so they fit properly, and we keep traffic stoppage to a minimum when we're out on the bridge. Whoops. Speaking of our painters have been spot painting the bridge per normal. One thing nice this year is it's the first year in several that we actually have the bridge to ourselves. So we've been sharing the bridge with Seaway contractors who had a contract with us to paint the towers, and they completed the painting of the South Tower last year. And although the tower looks great, they did a good job. We weren't able to get in there because we wanted to give them space and avoid their lane closure. So this year we've been able to get back in there around the South Tower and hit some of those areas that we had to kind of put on hold while they were there. So As you can see on the left, that's a before and an after. Just kind of shows how much that painting does kind of give new life to the steel and keeps it extending its life. Another thing we're doing, as part of the South Tower contract, we actually did not include the tower hangers, and that was just because we kind of wanted to keep that in-house. Contractors do a great job, but it's our bridge, and it's something that we want to make sure we maintain really well. So that's something we're touching up this year now, is going in and it's so that the whole tower has a new coat of paint. Just kind of to show the versatility of a day at the Mackinac Bridge. You never know what you're going to do. This was actually in the spring. With the spring thaw and rains, we actually had a washout on our plaza where one of our drainage structures had failed and created a hole next to the plaza deck. And luckily we had some of our guys had previous experience with underground construction. This is Keith Ginnup and Stanley Weckwart, who have been with us for a long time, but they actually went in, dug it all out, reconstructed that manhole from where it was good, and that top left is a after picture. And I went out there when it was raining. Everything's draining properly again, and it's just, you never know what you're going to find sometimes. But not only do we maintain the bridge, but we do maintain the campus and the plaza of the Mackinac Bridge Authority. Lastly, an update on our North Viaduct project. I highlighted that we're in the design phase of that project, which is still ongoing. As part of that project, we will be repaving the North Viaduct spans as well as rehabilitating the joints. And these are cores that were taken as part of the 2020 deck study. And because Parsons Corporation completed that deck study for us and were actually selected for the design, kind of a benefit was we had access to those cores, and they actually sent those in to materials testing consultants in Grand Rapids. And the latest update is they have completed laboratory testing on those cores, and basically they're confirming how well that pavement performed when it was last done in 2008, because that was a special mix design for us to try to make it as impermeable as possible. And MDOT actually created it for us back in 2008, 2009. And the report is forthcoming, but it's been good news. It seems that that pavement performed really well, so we're likely to see maybe not the exact pavement, but a similar mix design when we do go and repave the North Viaduct spans. Now lastly, just this week, if on your way through, you might see an extra boat in the water from Collins Engineers. They started this week with our underwater inspection. Our underwater inspection is required every 5 years per FHWA regulations. And it's actually a full inspection of all 32 water piers, and they dive them. This year, we're doing something that we don't do every underwater inspection, which is we're having a hydrographic survey performed as well. And we have had this done before, the last time in 2007, and we just felt it was a good time to the technology's advanced, to get that survey done, compare it with that 2007 data, and just see the differences, because that survey really gives us pretty good imagery of the channel bottom. And obviously, we have pretty deep piers, the deepest being about 142 feet. So to get images down there will be really helpful as we rate the condition of the piers. So with that, any questions?
Thank you, Cole. A very detailed report. Any questions, comments from the board?
Mr.
Member
Chairman,
Steidl?
Cole, thanks.
Yep.
When is the North Viaduct paving scheduled? Next spring, next summer?
Right now, we have been planning on the spring. So before traffic picks up, that's typically how we've done it in the past. Just this week, we discussed about splitting the work into a spring and a fall, but preferably we're shooting for the spring because that just is when traffic is lowest.
Okay, so one piece of advice, and Kim will remember this when we did it last time. The temperatures are cool in the spring, and the contractor had trouble with 38-degree temperature. I remember being involved going, what do you mean you left? Because the contractor left it. It was right before Memorial Day. So just one of those memory pieces that says just think about temperatures.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. We'll definitely make note and modify our specifications to
Yeah.
fit.
Bec-
Okay.
Any other? Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say one last thing on behalf of the maintenance staff, because they all know the chairman and Vice Chair Trahey as well. Thank you on behalf of the maintenance staff for your special interest in the maintenance staff over the years and all your help over the years.
Well, thank you. Coming from a man your caliber, that means a lot.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Cole.
Yep, thank you.
Good morning, Julie. It's nothing like hearing from the chief engineer first thing in the morning.
So I'm going to be talking today about the annual bridge walk. We are in, as usual, starting and continuing on for preparations for the walk. The new bridge walk plan, which makes it possible to start the walk from either end of the bridge, that began in 2018. And not much has changed in that plan since 2018, when we originally developed the plan. It seems to be a relatively good plan. We've heard a lot of good comments about the various options of the bridge walk. And this year, as usual, our communications is critical. We want the public to know that the bridge will be closed from 6:30 in the morning to noon, and that we want to make sure people understand their options for the bridge walk, because planning is critical in order to plan for a good bridge walk and a good experience. We also want to make sure that people are aware that at certain times and at certain points of the bridge, people will be turned around. And this is necessary to get people off the bridge so that we can open promptly at noon. James Lake has been in charge of our communications and has been doing a great job with that. Aside from communications and those types of things, we're having meetings with law enforcement and ordering materials and equipment to get ready for the walk. And I also want to mention all of our employees that work and prepare for the bridge walk. Everybody from people who order equipment to that participate in meetings, and then the day of the event, we have people that are at the bridge at 4 in the morning making coffee and handing out flashlights, sending out cones. And then after we open, we have the collectors who are taking care of all that traffic. So we really appreciate our employees there and doing a good job for us and making sure the bridge walk is successful. And that's all I have for that particular item.
Are there any questions of Julie in reference to the bridge walk? Such a good report, there's no questions.
Should I keep going?
Please do.
Okay. All right, high frequency radar. As you know, in March of 21, the board approved the installation of an antenna at the Bridgeview Park. At the same time, there was another antenna that was being installed on the south end of the Straits, south side of the Straits, on the property owned by the Mackinac State Historic Parks. And those two antennas work in conjunction to map the surface currents of the Straits of Mackinac. So the Great Lakes Observing System and Michigan Tech are hosting a commissioning event that will take place at the Bridgeview Park on August 12th at 1 o'clock. I believe all the board members should have received an email invitation to that event. The event is called Safety in the Straits. And the agenda includes speakers from various entities and a demonstration of the system and real-time reels of events, of surface current events that have happened in the Straits. We'll have some speakers from Representative Bergman's office, Senator Peters' office. The Integrated Ocean Observing System will talk about the national perspective of these these antennas that have been installed usually in the saltwater areas, but this is the first freshwater system. Michigan Tech's president will be speaking, and their staff, and they're hoping for a representative from the Bridge Authority that will be able to speak at this event as well. People in attendance, some entities that will be there, the Lake Carriers Association, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the U.S. Coast Guard, Marine Pollution Control will be there, the DNR, and the media. And so we're hoping that you can join us August 12th at the Bridgeview Park for that event. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Very good. Any questions of Julie? Please continue.
I think Kim's next.
No, according to my notes here, your report isn't done yet. And I wanted to take a minute or a few seconds here as one of my last official acts of the Bridge Authority as its chairman. And on behalf of the board, you know, I want to start bringing some real recognition here. Julie is going to be leaving us here in a few months. And let me tell you, 30 years of overseeing Michigan's crown jewel, as Governor Granholm would have put it. It's very, very remarkable what you've done. You're such a very unique person. You never are in a position where, you know, you're flaunting all your talents and everything. You give very detailed reports, and your loyalty and the dedication and everything else that you've done to this bridge, I'm telling you, is second to none. And we as a Bridge Authority have never not noticed that. And we thank you for your dedication, and we certainly wish you and Dave the best going forward. You worked hard for that retirement, and just in a few minutes, go and enjoy it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Shorty, for those comments. It's been an honor, truly, to work for the Mackinac Bridge and to take care of Michigan's crown jewel. It really has been an honor, and I could not have done it without the maintenance crew. I mean, truly, they have. Shorty, why did you do that?
Well, I told you, be alert.
So the maintenance crew has carried my career for sure. So, thank you.
Thank you again, Julie. Okay, we have some reports on legislative matters. Kim, please continue.
Okay. You have quite a bit of information in your book under tab 11 about the legislation that's affecting the bridge lately. We're going to talk about House Bill 5315 first, and that is the key facility bill. As you know, we had a case of a serious trespasser that prompted us to look at the key facility bill and try to use it to prosecute that trespasser. It was ruled that we were not a key facility, which surprised us. So we went and pursued becoming a key facility. So Representative DeMoose introduced this back in September of last year. It went through House committee hearings where we testified in support of it, and MDOT testified in support of it, and passed out of the committee into the Senate. And now it is Now it has passed out of the Senate Transportation Committee into the full Senate. And so I'd like to point out with that bill that the Mackinac Bridge started it because of the intruder we had and the prosecution we tried to do, but the bill now contains information and affects many facilities around the state. All the movable bridges in the state, all the international crossings, which include the new Gordie Howe, the Ambassador, the International Bridge, the Blue Water Bridge, the Windsor Tunnel. So it affects a lot of facilities around the state. It's not just the Mackinac Bridge. This is going through the legislature, and we would like, as a staff recommendation, for the board to officially support House Bill 5315 as it's making its way through the legislature.
Thank you, Kim, and we'll certainly take action on your recommendation in just a minute. But I wanted to give everybody a little history and bring everybody up to speed on what has transpired here. As you know, legislation isn't easy to move from time to time. But there's a couple people that played a very significant role in getting it to where it is. And you stop and think about it in today's climate, political climate, I should say, you have a bill that goes through the House of Representatives 96-6. That's very good news right there. It's a good bill. But a quick shout out to Representative DeMoose. He picked this ball up and run with it. And I tell you what, he did an excellent job. And I also want to thank Kim and Troy Hagan. Troy is, there he is back there. Stand up for a minute, Troy. Troy did a great job on, for the Bridge Authority in working it through the process. You know, we had several meetings individually, committee hearings, Zoom meetings, individual phone calls to reps and senators, but it was all done under Troy's leadership. And you may want to revisit his contract director, because I'm not sure that the pay is right on that. But at any rate, thank you, Troy. We really appreciate it.
Isn't that a Kevlar shirt that Troy wore?
And I want to thank a couple. I want to thank the entire board, because everybody was involved in it. But there was two members here particularly that spent a great deal of time and effort on it, and that's member Tricia Kinley. Thank her for her time and expertise and everything, as well as member Bill Milliken. Everybody pulled in together, and we got a very successful bill through. So with that being said, I'd like to call on Bill Milliken. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm teasing. Go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Mr. Chair, sorry. Could I just add one, if you'll indulge me, Mr. Chair, also kudos to the staff. Since this bill is now in the Senate, I think it would behoove us as an entity to keep pressing, not only, first I'd say, enlisting the help of the other bridges that are so impacted by this, or would be so detrimentally impacted potentially if this does not get signed into law. So as an entity, we've got to keep enlisting all the other bridges to help us get this across the finish line, but then also really pressing on the Senate to finish the job on this bill. Because while they are adjourned, it is of critical importance that we get this done as soon as possible. So I would just maybe, just want to add that 2 cents worth then, that we've gotten it so far along thanks to the staff work and the attorney's assistance on this, the AG, but getting it across the finish line, we need the Senate to act as quickly as possible.
Right. And we're certainly looking forward to the fact that they're going to, because of the infrastructure, not only just the Mackinac Bridge, but the entire state of Michigan, how this is affected. So thank you, Trish, for those wonderful comments. Bill?
And to that end, I have a resolution that I'd like to put forward for the board's consideration. Whereas the Mackinac Bridge Authority is committed to preserve and maintain the state of Michigan's single largest asset and one of the world's leading suspension bridges to provide safe, pleasurable, and expedient passage over the Straits of Mackinac for economic benefit and improved quality of life. And whereas trespassing on the Mackinac Bridge represents a security risk for bridge operations and the traveling public, and whereas trespassing on the Mackinac Bridge is dangerous to patrons crossing the bridge as well as to the trespasser. And whereas the Mackinac Bridge is a key facility in the state of Michigan and is a critical connection point between the two peninsulas of Michigan. And whereas trespassers on the Mackinac Bridge should be held accountable for the very serious nature of their offense, and now therefore be it resolved that we, the undersigned members of the Mackinac Bridge Authority, strongly support House Bill 5315, which makes the Mackinac Bridge and other facilities in the state of Michigan key facilities and defines trespassing on these key facilities as a felony offense. And I so move.
Is there support to the motion? Okay, the motion's been, it's been moved and supported to support the resolution in support of House Bill 5315. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Kim, would you call roll, please?
Yes. Chairman Gleason?
Yes.
Vice Chair Trahey?
Yes.
Director Ajaba?
Yes.
Member Cheeseman?
Yes.
Member Kinley?
Yes.
Member Steidel?
Yes.
And Member Milliken?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Kim, you still have the floor on another piece of very interesting legislation.
Thank you for this motion and resolution you just passed. It's very important. We're going to move on now to a different topic. Night and day topic, I guess you could say, from an important topic of key facility. Now we're going to look at the farm implement legislation that we've been dealing with. If you remember, that's also in your booklet. We've been looking at the farm implement legislation back when it was proposed as a House bill, House Bill 4165 and House Bill 4782. We testified in opposition to those in the Transportation Committee, and they didn't make it. They were not voted out of the Transportation Committee of the House. So since that time, Senate Bill 1014 and 1078 have been put forth, which are identical to the House bills, and so we're dealing with the Senate bills right now. You'll see the history of those bills on the screen there and in your booklet. I'd like to just talk about these bills as they were written and as they were submitted. I have a few points to talk about and a few slides to show you. So they are, these Senate bills would allow implements of husbandry to cross the Mackinac Bridge. And so as a point of note is that these were prompted by what we believe is one individual's request to come across the bridge, which is a liquid manure hauler and sprayer from the Grand Rapids area. We just don't get requests for farmers to come across the bridge on a regular basis. They're not calling us and requesting this. So I'd just like to make that point. In the bills, as they are written, the size and the weight of the farm implements is not limited. And so when you look up implements of husbandry online, these are the kinds of things that you come up with. And so those would be allowed as the bills are written. We would not know the weights of any of these vehicles if they showed up to cross the bridge. So all that is very concerning. The bills do not require any MDOT permitting of the farm implements, and right now MDOT does not permit farm implements at all unless they're on a trailer being hauled. So that is not in the bill, the permitting of the implements of husbandry as a standalone vehicle. Right now, if these vehicles want to come across, there's a very tried and true way for them to come across on flatbed trailers, on low boys. If they're over width, they get a permit through MDOT. MDOT does all our permitting where the weights are declared, the dimensions are declared. They come across on that trailer system. They can drive all they want on interstate. They're legal. All the rules of the road are in place for the drivers of the trailer. you know, it's just a legal way to get that vehicle across the bridge. And those vehicles go across our weigh in motion system on the north end and on the south end of the bridge. So we know if one of those implements was on a lowboy trailer coming across the bridge, we know what that whole thing weighs because we saw it go across the weigh in motion scale. If one of those vehicles tried to go across the weigh in motion scale, which they couldn't because that stretch of the highway is not included in these bills, so they wouldn't be allowed in the first place, but I'm not sure any of those vehicles would read correctly on our weigh in motion scales. So that's very concerning to us, is what is the weight of these? We would have to know that before they cross the bridge. These vehicles are so unusual that I would strongly recommend that if any of them came across, they would be escorted by our employees, because you wouldn't want vehicles like this driving next to the normal traffic. And so that would add jobs for our maintenance workers and costs for our maintenance workers, as would figuring out that weight if we needed to have scales or something like that put in place. I wanted to point out too that opening the doors for farm implements, implements of husbandry, would lead us down a path of opening the doors to other things. So on this slide here, if you Google implements of husbandry, you come up with vehicles like this. If you do another Google search of construction equipment, you come up with the same exact vehicles being used in a different situation. So how would we know when something showed up, whether it was an implement of husbandry, whether it was from a contractor, where it was from? So who's going to make that determination? So it does open the door to other things. One other thing that I wanted to point out is, you know, we talked about large vehicles and heavy vehicles, but here's another thing that is a farm, could be considered farm implements. If you look online for implements of husbandry and ATVs, there's all kinds of uses for all these smaller vehicles being used as an implement of husbandry in all kinds of different ways. And so those could be showing up at the bridge and saying, I'm a farm implement, I want to go across. So we're concerned about that too. And I wanted to mention too that the rules of the road are kind of unknown in this situation, other than farm implements in general have different rules for insurance, have different rules for lighting, for brakes, for all kinds of things like that. And how would that apply to them coming across the bridge? And do we want them mixing in with our normal traffic? I have very high concerns about that. Insurance on their vehicle. They're not required to have the same kinds of insurances. So if they damage something, how does that work? I don't know. And they don't pay a fuel tax for the fuel that's in their farm implement. So there's just a ton of questions about allowing farm implements on the Mackinac Bridge. This is an example right out my office window that I happened to see and grabbed my camera. This is a legally transported couple of different farm implements, 2 tractors and a plowing machine on a lowboy trailer. And so we see this kind of thing all the time, whether it's farm implements or construction vehicles or any kind of thing like that. And if they're over the 8'6" wide, they have to have an oversized permit, but they legally come across. We saw the weights of this vehicle as it came across our scales. It's just a wonderful, tried and true way to get vehicles like this across the bridge. So as a staff recommendation, we have testified in the House hearing and in the Senate Transportation hearing in opposition to these farm implement bills. And we would like, as a staff recommendation, for the full board to give us their official recommendation to oppose these bills.
Thank you, Kim.
You're welcome.
Any discussion? I've got a few things I want to state, but give the opportunity to the board first. You know, I just wanted to always make this, the legislation's always been an interesting topic to watch. And normally it's driven by a huge public outcry or certain agencies or associations, whatever the case may be, feel that, you know what, we have to change this because it's just impeding the way we do business or things of that nature. How many calls have you had about allowing this to happen on the bridge?
Just the one individual. In the past 20 years that I've been there, they're not calling and asking to do this.
Yeah, very good. And we can certainly see how detrimental it is to the bridge itself, especially the impeding the traffic, the structural integrity, and everything else. So, you know, once again, I want to thank everybody for their involvement on this. It's been very, very good, and it's helped us a lot being educated. And Kim has done a phenomenal job on this. Thank you. Kurt?
Yeah, I have a question. You know, we focus on the 5 miles of the Mackinac Bridge, but this is Interstate 75. Nowhere else in the state would we even think about allowing those pictures of those vehicles on Interstate 75. I mean, that's a piece that just gets missed a lot.
Yeah.
And Kim, I really appreciate you putting up the pictures and showing the difference. And the last one is the one that really, really concerns me. Knowing the push for more ATV access and, you know, alongside the roads and the rest, you can see how that would get abused. So I'm completely supportive, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and I think I-75 is about 1,800 miles in total length. So we're asking for a little carve out here of 5 miles. Good point. Thank you, Kurt.
I wonder what the highway administration would say.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
Mr. Chair, I also wanted to cite Representative DeMoose and his assistance crossing the Capitol and coming over to the Senate side to
Oh,
explain why the opposition and why he'd put his bill forward in the House. That was helpful, and it gave this momentum.
thank you very much. At this time, Trish, I'd like to call on you for your report.
Thank you. So, and I'd like to maybe make just a couple comments before a suggested motion, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I also want to say thanks to the staff on this legislation. It has been a real challenge, and you know, certainly we have with our other legislation we discussed where we're trying to push something. You know, obviously sometimes comes the day where we have to take a big gulp and sometimes decide whether we can support, be neutral, or oppose legislation. And I really want to say thank you to the staff for their diligent work on this. The staff and the subcommittee worked diligently to look at alternatives to this legislation or ways to narrow or tailor it, and really overturned many rocks. Kim in particular, along with the MDOT staff, how could we make this legislation better? It is so concerning, but the subcommittee, with staff's help, looked at all sorts of variations, different parameters we could put in. Unfortunately, in the end, after all that work, it just became clear there was no workable way to narrow this in a way that would not still jeopardize the structural integrity of the bridge and safety of motorists. And that has to be our utmost top priority. So we really uncovered all those rocks. Thanks again, Kim. But unfortunately, there was just no workable way to do so. So I just wanted to make sure that we made that crystal clear to the rest of the board. I guess in the end, I would like to make a motion on this issue, if I could.
Please do.
Okay. So I move that the board agree that the MBA's bridge director and this board's special committee acted in good faith by thoroughly evaluating whether the proposed bills regarding farm implements could be modified to become bills that this board could support. In the end, these individuals determined that the proposed bills and variations of them, if signed into law, would compromise the structural integrity and operations of the Mackinac Bridge and the safety of motorists who travel on the bridge. They accordingly, I guess that would be us, recommend for these reasons that the board oppose the proposed bills or variations of them. I so move for the board's agreement and support on that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do I hear
I'd
support?
be happy to support that motion.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Is there any discussion on the motion? The motion is to not support the two Senate bills that Trish had made reference to, which is, I believe, 1014 and 1078. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying, oh, excuse me, roll call, please.
Okay, Chairman Gleason?
Yes.
Vice Chair Trahey?
Yes.
Director Ajaba? Yes. Member Cheeseman?
Yes.
Member Kinley?
Yes.
Member Steidel?
Yes.
And Member Milliken?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Trish, for your expertise once again. Okay, Mike, the 200 millionth vehicle crossing the Mackinac Bridge.
Good morning, everybody. Just turned it off. Sorry. Is it on? There we go. Good morning, everybody. I get to report on a little lighter subject, other than Senate bills. We recently reached another milestone at the Mackinac Bridge. I'm sure you've heard about it through different avenues. Sorry. What we're looking at here, we recently achieved our 200 millionth crossing. Pretty unique milestone. We had great participation. You see there was the Visitors Bureau from Senegnes, the Chamber of Commerce from Mackinac City. Shardy and Carolyn were there, which was very nice. Some of the topics that we touched on, we had meetings prior to this that led up to this event. The Chamber and Visitors Bureau were great to work with. They went to the local communities in Mackinac City and Senegnes. I think there might have been some participation from the island also. They were able to put together a great gift basket. It was larger than a laundry basket, had a value over $500. In addition to that, we presented the family with a great framed picture of the Mackinac Bridge. It was a beautiful sunny day. Some of the things that how we made it happen, I worked with Carrie Dornbecker, which is one of Cammie's employees. We tracked traffic patterns for several months leading up to this, and then we narrowed it down to the month, to the week, to the day. We just kept refining it. Then we actually went out and I closed all the lanes down so we could narrow it down to one lane. And then we were down to 99, 98, 96. So we really honed in on it. And we were fortunate. We had the Dahlman family from Tawas City. Was a husband and a wife, 2 teenage children. They were in a pretty small car. They were headed to Pictured Rocks, I believe, to do some hiking, maybe some kayaking. It was kind of a too good to be true, feel-good story. Like, wow, this is the perfect family for this. And it was one of the things I enjoyed the most was they were driving a small Toyota Corolla, I believe, and we presented them with this large frame photo. It was about 3 feet square in this large stuffed basket. And I remember the father opening up the trunk, and it was just packed with gear. And I thought, I don't know how they're going to get that in there. So I recommended they put the fudge and popcorn up front, and they got it in their car. And they were very thrilled. I know that Shorty was there and met with the family. Very neat experience. Our 150 millionth crossing wasn't that long ago. It was about 13 years ago. A gentleman from Clare, Michigan, for the 150 millionth. So in 13 years, a little short of 13, 50 million vehicles. Pretty good accomplishment by the Mackinac Bridge Authority from top to bottom. It's a lot of transactions for our toll collectors. We couldn't do it without them. And I want to thank Carrie for helping me with that process. But it was a fun event. It's one of those things that you get to work on that is enjoyable and a real treat. So I don't think any of us will probably be there when we reach 250 million, but in 13 years, some of us might be there. Yeah. But a unique milestone that we achieved. Any questions?
Excellent work by you and the entire staff, and it was kind of unique how it got funneled right down. And there's no doubt in anybody's mind that that was the 200 millionth vehicle. I mean, there's a science to it. I was pretty impressed on how they counted it and narrowed it right down, and fantastic work. And it was nice enjoying sharing the day with Caroline there. We had a good time. So thank you.
Great.
As always,
Great.
you never cease to amaze us.
Thank you.
Okay, Kim, you have an update for us on the upcoming cable inspections?
Sure. I'd just like to say that very nice day up at the bridge was, while that was going on, Bill and Tricia and I and
didn't wanna
Troy
bring
were
that
having
up.
fun with the Senate hearing. So it was a very busy day for the Bridge Authority. Let's see here. I'd just like to report on this. I'm not sure I reported on it in the past because it was ongoing, but in 2018 I was asked to join a transportation research board in Washington, D.C. to be on a panel to work on revising the guidelines for the inspection of suspension bridges, main cable systems. And so I was very happy to be selected, and I've been participating in that since 2018. And so that panel was tasked with hiring a consultant to revise those guidelines and to investigate how it should be revised. The original guidelines came out in 2004, and so suspension bridges around the world have been using those guidelines, and it was time to look at the results that they'd obtained and how to change those. And so that was our task, and we're reaching the end of that task right now. If you'll remember, we haven't looked at cable inspections in quite a while, but just as a reminder, the requirement is to actually open up the main cable to look to the very center of the main cable and assess the condition of those wires. And so that's what Parsons is doing in this picture, cracking open the main cable to look at those wires. And so that's the process we are tasked with reevaluating. The result of that is they use a corrosion chart to gauge the stages of corrosion in the wires, and then they assign a corrosion stage to every wire in the whole cross-section of the main cable. And so this is what it was in the past, and one of the things that was done in this change to the guidelines was to fine-tune the statistical analysis that goes into this analysis right here. And so that was a big part of the changes that were done to make it more reliable statistically. And another big part of the changes were to make the inspection more of a risk-based thing. So there's a series of questions that the owners go through with regard to what characteristics they have on their bridge, what kind of coating system they have on their cable, whether they have dehumidification on their cable system, whether they're in a saltwater environment, different things like that. And then your inspection frequency is related to those kind of risk-based characteristics. So most recently with this panel, I was in Washington at the end of June for a workshop where we presented the new guidelines to owners from around the U.S. and some owners from Canada. And they got a chance to look at the new guidelines and go through some example problems and ask questions. And now the consultant is using that information that was gained at the workshop to just further refine the new guidelines. So the goal of this panel is to get this to be an AASHTO guideline. So it'll be presented at AASHTO, I think this fall. So it's all good. And then we'll get back into the business of inspecting our main cables.
Excellent report. Go ahead, Bill.
How does an operator dehumidify a cable?
Well, have you been in our anchor piers? Yeah, so that would be one area that would be dehumidified, whether you encapsulate the wires in the anchor pier, dehumidify with these massive dehumidification machines. Then you wrap the cable with a tight, I'm going to call it plastic. It's not plastic, but sheathing so that air cannot escape, and then you just start blowing air into your main cable through the length of the main cable. And what that does is it lowers the relative humidity inside the cable so that corrosion can't happen. So as long as that dehumidification process is working all the time and doesn't break down, corrosion can't happen because the humidity is such that it's below the area, the level of corrosion happening. So it's a wonderful thing, and new bridges are using that, and bridges are getting retrofitted with that. So I can see that in our future somewhere.
Thank you. Anything else from the board? Thank you. Very nice. Appreciate it. Go ahead, Kurt. I'm sorry.
I just want to congratulate Kim and thank her for being on that committee and serving. I'm sure you now have a bigger network of owner-operators across the country to deal with. And frankly, that's a huge benefit to the authority, right? To tap into the national expertise and for Kim in that conversation is really, really significant. And you know, thanks to the director down there for allowing her to travel to go to those kind of events.
Yes,
I
thank
know
you.
firsthand that other states that does not happen. They can't leave the state. And so, Kim, thanks for all of that. That's a tremendous asset.
You're welcome. It was quite an honor to be asked to be on it. So, yeah, thank you.
Great report. Thank you, Kim. Okay, we'll hear from our vice chair, chair of the financial committee. Amy, your report, please.
Thank you. Yes, we had a meeting yesterday here in the same facility to host the finance committee. All members were present. Thank you, gentlemen. We had first an update from Greg, Lewis, and Lon from the Bureau of Investment Services with the Michigan Department of Treasury. They gave us a great update as to where we are with the economy and how that may impact our investments. The good news is long-term, our investments are very stable, regardless of the inflation and the things we're seeing going on with Ukraine. Mike gave a traffic and revenue update, which shows we are down with our mainly commercial traffic. That's being attested to the increase in gasoline prices primarily, but we're actively monitoring that and aware of those down tolls. There were some action items that the board approved, and those were the repayment of an advancement to the Department of Transportation. These payments are due every August in the amount of $250,000. Also, Cami, the CFO of the Mackinac Bridge Authority, gave us the proposed fiscal 2023 budget. Basically, the budget consists of about $24.6 million. And the operating expenses that are consuming that consist of bridge services, maintenance, infrastructure preservation, administrative costs, finance, and capital assets. And of that number, the most significant cost in there, or the biggest increase, I guess, in the infrastructure projects, that is tested to roughly $11 million for the bridge deck resurfacing, which Cole touched on, that's going to be occurring in 2023, maybe spring, maybe a little bit later, depending on how that goes. But that's a huge chunk of our budget for 2023. Overall, we recommended approval of that budget. A couple other recommendations that Cami had regarding credit card fees. So with COVID, a lot of people were not using money and accepting money and using credit cards. And as just the trends are with people nowadays using credit cards for just about anything, whether it's a Starbucks coffee or going across the Mackinac Bridge, we are not seeing, we are paying and incurring these fees that range anywhere from 2.5% to 3%. And the magnitude of the transactions is a significant amount that the authority is not realizing, to the tune of around $250,000. So there is a recommendation for the CFO to look at how to recoup that money in an average way, depending on all the different credit card providers that are out there. They range in their percentage fees, and also it was recommended that the Attorney General's office Kathleen Gleason look into, just to make sure we're okay to recoup those percentages that we determine. to be appropriate. Another item that was discussed was tokens. So I don't know how many people remember tokens, but they're still out there that motorists can use to drop in to pay for their crossing compared to the credit card or cash. They're not allowed anymore, but sorry. They were, 2019, I think we stopped doing the tokens. People still have them in their drawers or in their pockets or in their vehicles, and they want to get reimbursed for them. And the reimbursements over the last several years have dwindled down to like 121 tokens were redeemed. There's an extensive administrative burden to redeeming those tokens, and it was recommended that we cease reimbursing the tokens with well advanced to the public as of this December 31st of 2022. I think there was one other discussion point. We did have a human resource update regarding the restructuring of the unemployment, the winter call-ins, and the winter work. And it was a lively discussion, really focusing around the loss of 18 maintenance staff that's occurred since the first quarter of 2019. And that the Mackinac Bridge Authority and the administration, we have a need for 91 maintenance workers. We have 83. There's active efforts to fill these positions that are so needed, and aggressive recruiting, hiring, training, and retaining these specialized maintenance workers is so required for the structural integrity and the safe operation of the bridge. So Kip highlighted what the efforts are out there right now that you guys are doing, and we know that it's such a specialized operation that these people have to incur that, we're seeing the industry wide. It's hard to find good people. It's even harder to retain them after you've trained them. So with the action items, if we could get a motion to approve.
I'd be pleased to support the Finance Committee Chair's motion.
I'll support.
Is there any discussion? A lot of you were there. Shorty.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We have a motion and support on the table to accept the financial report from Vice Chair Trahey. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor, roll call, please.
All right, Chairman Gleason,
Yes.
Vice Chair Trahey,
Yes.
Director Ajaba,
Yes.
Member Cheeseman,
Yes.
Member Kinley,
Yes.
Member Steidel,
Yes.
Member Milliken.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy, for that wonderful report, very detailed. Okay, we have the fall 2022 meeting schedule. And I see it's going to be in Ann Arbor, and I'm sure we have a good tour guide down there to help us. I don't think there's a need for a motion there, which is informational. With that being said, Amy, did you want the floor for a minute? Okay. Okay, I guess before I get into public comment, I just want to say thank you a million times. Unbelievable, not only for the individuals that I have the pleasure of serving with today, but all your predecessors and all the staff and the MDOT people, and it's just been a tremendous, tremendous experience. I can't thank you enough. With that being said, public comment. Anyone from the public comment? Steve? I should announce it. Steve, he's the chair of the Northern Michigan University Board, and thank you for your service. So, with that being said, a motion to adjourn would be in order. Is there support? It's been moved and supported. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.